had the orientation wrong, which was very embarrassing. So hopefully we got it right this time. 100% improvement. But we are going to be live casting we're going to live cast all the readings and a little bit of the Q&A, and then we're going to turn you guys off, and we're going to talk amongst ourselves. So next time, come. But we're really excited to be a little bit more Q&A-y later. But for right now, what I can tell you is my name is DeVoe. I write under DeVoe, and just making sure I'm on. And I am the founding director of Parentis. So that's cool. Parentis is a literary nonprofit. It is a 501c3, so all the donations you make are tax deductible. And they all go towards our mission, which is to keep writers on creative track after they start a family. So that means if you have a baby, you keep writing your novel. Very simple. Except when you try to do it. But so we provide all kinds of support. We say we provide resources because what happens when you have a child is not that you run out of talent or that you suddenly are not dedicated to your career. What happens is you have limited resources. You no longer have the time or the energy or the money or all of those or some combination. And if an outside agency gives you somehow money or time or energy, somehow feeds you, all of a sudden, you're Jennifer Egan and you win the Pulitzer Prize, although she did it without us. But, you know, there are a score of people that just because they found out that Parentis exists, we're like, you know what, I can keep going. I can write one more page of my novel. So that's why we are here. And why you are here is because of these amazing women who all are parents and all write whatever they write, which you will find out and you will get to hear, and that is very exciting. I do want to ask real quick, just for a show of hands, who is new, has never been to Parentis, to any salons? Whoa, look at all the new people, newbies. We love you, come back every time. It's a once-a-month thing, so you're more than welcome to come back. You don't have to know any of the authors to come through that door, so please, anytime. And who among you is a writer? Who writes? That's a lot. That's like 1.5. How many of you are parents? A different more than half. How many of you are writer parents? And everybody who's over there. Awesome. That's really awesome. Okay, so we want to welcome all of you, whoever you are, even if you are just here for the food, which I want to thank Loretta Shapiro for her donation. It covers this beautiful spread, so thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And if anybody would like to be a food sponsor, come talk to me later, and then you also will get a good round of applause next time. So is that my whole spiel? I have some dates and times to tell you, but I will tell you those later. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Christina Chiu, author of the forthcoming novel Beauty, and eponymously herself a beauty. Anyway, yeah, that was really bad. This is Christina, she's our curator today.
So it's great seeing you guys. Thanks for coming. Being a writer, I mean, how can you not have alternate lives? I mean, it's like every time you sit down to write, you become this other person, right? And it's interesting because I always give authors a chance to decide what they want, which salon they'd like to read at, and here we have 3 authors who are like, me, that's the salon. So I'm really looking forward to what they are going to share with us, and I'm sure you are going to also. Randon Billings' novel is our first reader. She is the author of Be With Me Always, which is right back here, and we sell books during intermission. or afterwards, and also the lyric essay chapter called Devotional. Her work has appeared in Modern Love, the Massachusetts Review, the Georgia Review, Brainchild, The Rumpus, Brevity, Fourth Genre, Creative Nonfiction, and elsewhere. She lives in Washington and came all the way, Washington, D.C., and came all the way up here to read for us. So thank you. And she and her spouse, and she's got 8-year-old twins. And I am a twin, so I have to say, it's amazing to see her here tonight. And she, so it seems like her kids are going to be authors one day. One seems to be very into graphic novels, and the other one seems to be a romance fantasy historical writer. So everyone please welcome Randon Billings Noble.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to read from 2 short essays in my collection, Be With Me Always, that both touch on the theme of alternate lives. And the first one is called Marked. When I can't sleep at night, my hand strays across my belly and fingers the stretch marks on my side. One is particularly deep. I poke my fingertip into its crater and wonder what I am touching, what layer of skin or tissue. I consider how it was slowly worn from the incremental and unremitting growth of pregnancy. What relentless power to rend the body, even its skin. The body that once held 2 human beings now holds memory. The memory of the undeniably gorgeous body I had at 16, of the Indian summer that same but different body had at 36, lithe and stronger than it had ever been after many hours and 2 ranks of Aikido. The memory of the afternoon the twins were conceived and the morning that they were born. Of my incredulity at the twins' size, beauty, and immediate, discreet personhood. Of the disbelief that I was finally delivered not only of them, but also of the physical burden they placed on me. Over 15 pounds of baby and perhaps another 15 of their accoutrements. The memory of their constant presence and my ability to ever leave them, even for a moment, not for a stiff drink, a pot of coffee, a winter evening walk, or a full night's sleep. The morning that they were born, my body was freed, but my soul evermore bound. Well, my body was almost free. The loose skin and map of stretch marks will not go away unless I choose to cut them away. I do not choose to remove these parts of myself because I believe that this is what happens to bodies. They carry and stretch and age and scar. I believe that changing my shape through surgery would somehow alter who I am, and I don't want to alter who I am. This is what I look like because this is the way I've lived. I would sooner cut away my fast walk, my peculiar handwriting, my particular singing voice. Still, I mourn the body that I've lost. But it is like mourning my time as a single woman when I married, or a childless woman when I became a mother. This kind of mourning is often misunderstood, but it is necessary. I loved my life when I was young and free, the many adventures I had and the mistakes I made, the romances and the irresponsibility, and the knowledge that my future was wide open. But then I met my mate, and traded possibilities for one rich certainty. When we decided to try for a child, we traded our joint possibilities for another certainty. We knew that our lives would never be the same. Our past lives are worth mourning, and mourning them in no way diminishes the lives we live now. One person encompasses many lives. The origin of the word capacity comes from the Latin capere, to take or hold. After my body no longer held the twins, its excesses subsided. The fluids I had retained slowly drained away. My ankles reappeared. My belly tightened. I drank a lot of coffee and a little bourbon, took long walks, slept lying down instead of propped up, did cobra pose in yoga, zipped but couldn't quite button an old pair of jeans. Now at night, I lie in the dark and feel the marks that stipple my skin. These spots and blemishes, these symbols and signs, these imprints and impacts. They remind me that I've been stretched to capacity, beyond capacity, and then managed to stretch further and hold. The second and last essay that I'm going to read is also short, and it's known as a hermit crab essay. A hermit crab essay borrows another form of writing, the way a hermit crab borrows another animal's shell. So it might be an essay told in the form of a list, or a recipe, or a syllabus. And this essay is about a transgressive crush I had, the temptation of an alternate life. And it's told in the form of a WebMD entry. It's called The Heart as a Torn Muscle. Overview. Your heart was already full, but then you saw him. And your heart beat code, not Morse, but a more insistent pulse. Oh yes, that's him, that one. Not the one, capital T, capital O, the one you already have and deeply love. But of all the people in that large room far from home, he was the one for you. And your heart stretched more than it should have, tore a little, and let him in. Symptoms. Swelling, bruising, or redness. The feeling that your lungs contain a higher percentage of oxygen and have somehow grown in their capacity to respire. A heightened sensitivity to glances, postures, gestures, attitudes, and casual remarks from observers. A propensity to blush. Pain at rest, general restlessness, an inability to sleep, fever dreams, sleepwalking, conscious walking, out of your bedroom, out of doors, into the moonlight or an unmown field shrouded in mist, and ache, or fantasies of same. Pain when the specific muscle is used. When your heart beats to force blood through your femoral arteries, to your iliopsoas muscles, your sartorius muscles, your peroneus muscles, each expanding and contracting to force your legs to walk away. From him, from thrill, from all the promise and potential of an alternate future. Inability to use the muscle at all. Lethargy, apathy, malaise, especially after having walked away from the one in question. Self-care. Apply ice, cool it. The early application of heat can increase swelling and pain. Note, ice or heat should not be applied to bare skin. Always use a protective layer, latex only as a very last resort. Clothing is better, or better still, several feet, a separate piece of furniture, a wall, or a building. Ideally, a state line, a continent. Try an anti-inflammatory such as herbal tea or a pro-calm list. Cool showers and brisk walks in bracing air may help. Do not take depressants in the form of alcohol or otherwise. Avoid stimulants, caffeine, chocolate, Cheetos. Protect the strained muscle from further injury by refusing to jump into anything. Avoid the activities that cause the strain and other activities that are painful. Compression. Hold yourself together. Elevation. Rise above. When to seek care. If home remedies bring no relief in 24 hours, call your youngest and most bohemian friend. If you hear a popping sound signifying a break from your primary relationship, the one, capital T, capital O, you truly know and truly love, call your closest and most trusted friend. Exams and tests. Your youngest and most bohemian friend asks, are you going to run away together, tryst in motels, meet up in Paris, open a P.O. box, wear a trench coat, give each other code names, assume another identity? Would you be up for a threesome? Want to use my place? Says it's so romantic. Says tell me everything. Your closest and most trusted friend asks, what do you mean met someone? Have you thought this through? Is this choice supporting, adding to, enriching, complicating, marring, degrading, not even leaving a blip on the screen in the way in which you will see your life in the years to come? What will you be left with? Regret, memory, or absolutely nothing? Says, time wounds, all heals. Says, don't fuck up. Recommended reading. Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. The Bridges of Madison County by Robert James. Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, The Literal Zone by Andrew Barrett, The End of the Affair by Graham Greene. No horoscopes, no tarot cards or tea leaves. If you must, you may steep yourself in stories of passion and price. Years from now, you can indulge in what ifs. But for now, right now, put your hand to your chest and feel what beats. The only muscle you can't live without needs to stay whole. Thank you.
So my question for you is this. How did you figure out to use that form? I mean, I think when people think of essays, they have a very conventional idea of essay.
Yes.
And so, how do you realize that it's not a conventional essay and it's going to be structured in this other fashion?
For this particular essay, I knew I wanted to write about this transgressive crush. And I thought about writing it in the form of a timeline, sort of that inverted check mark that people use to teach creative writing. Like, how does it build? What's the climax? How can you get yourself out of it in a denouement that doesn't destroy your life? Or maybe it does, but it didn't, so happy ending there. So I was thinking about it in terms of a timeline. And I was on a residency, and I was moving a very heavy desk so that I could look out the window. And in doing so, I pulled a muscle in my back. And so I immediately did non-writerly research. I went on WebMD to think, how can I fix this fast? I'm away from home, whatever it takes, I'll do the ice, which I hate, but whatever it takes, I'm gonna do. And as I was going through what I read, the symptoms, the exams and tests, they always have recommended further reading about the structure of your back or whatever you're looking at, I realized all of this advice served to help me think about this transgressive crush. And then I realized the heart is also a muscle. And so for this particular essay, I feel like it almost wrote itself. I knew I was going to write about the subject. I knew I was going to do it in a slightly unconventional way. And then in some ways, fate or my poor choices trying to move this enormous desk intervened and led me to that particular form.
Oh, that's wonderful. So we're going to have the Q&A later. So I'm going to introduce our next guest. So we have another person from out of town, from Texas. Amy Edwards is an Austin-based rock and roll mom and author of The Trouble with Becoming a Witch and Starla and the Boogie Deluxe. She's also a radio personality at Austin 360 Radio and an actor. Everyone, please welcome Amy Edwards.
Thank you, and thank you so much, guys, for having me tonight. I'm really excited that I got to come. The Trouble with Becoming a Witch is about a woman who is essentially stifled in the role that she's chosen and stifled in her life and is longing for an alternative life, and she's searching for something. And when she starts to study witchcraft, things really unravel in her marriage. So I'm going to read the first chapter of this book. 1. Be careful what you wish for. These words are always with me, I guess because I found so much truth in them. And as I sit here in the pretty paper gown at the OBGYN, I know that truth once again fresh. I wished it. It's hard to accept that I thought something, hoped it, and got it. If only I were focused on the positive. Is there any positive? The words just hang there in my head, stuck in front of me, taunting me, saying, see, it's your fault. I hope I have a miscarriage. Awful, right? Fuck, I'm awful. But the fight that came right before it is also lingering around, waiting for me to enjoy a rehashing of it too. I'm happy to oblige. What the hell? I'm already cold and exposed. Why not add more angst to the mix of self-flagellation? It's a skill I've excelled at over the years and become quite adept at, I might add. I can see myself leaving or escaping last night as I was headed out to the movies with my friend Jen. I offhandedly remarked that my stomach, I just found out I was pregnant last week, but was excited and trying for it, stomach was hurting. If I didn't know better, I said, I think I was going to start my period. Pete dove right in. This can't be like last time. You need to really watch your weight this pregnancy. I was aghast. I think my jaw might have actually dropped. Sure, I got past 180, but I'm tall, nearly 5'9", and I lost it all and weigh less than before now. Is being a size 6 or size 8 the end of the world? Fuck you. I can't even remember what I said next exactly, but it was something like, I'm paraphrasing here, stuff it. Or maybe I thought that. I would have enjoyed calling him a motherfucker. I would have enjoyed a lot right then. But I figured the sooner I left, the better. Okay. So I think I remember. I should remember better since it was yesterday, but when I get heated, I get fuzzy. Saying something in my own defense like, I think I'll be just fine, and I don't need you telling me that. I recall trying to make it sound delicate, but my tone betrayed my attempt. Isn't it funny how a situation occurs and then it blurs? I would probably make a terrible detective or crime scene investigator because details always escape me later. This was no exception. I'll attribute it to a mix of anger and annoyance. I then began making my way across the staid, straight-laid saltillo tile, just wanting to make a break from this person and this conversation. All the while, my stomach was still cramping. I wanted to go sit at the draft house, have a burger or fried pickles, or something else comforting and not feel guilty about it. Let my fat ass be. You know, he spouted with a finger pointing in my direction, lockstep behind me. I can't ever say anything to you about your weight. He didn't used to be like this. It used to be fun and sweet and easy. Now it's pointy and accusatory and weird. It makes me want to run away. I want to see my friend and have someone be nice to me, someone to have fun with. That's right, you can't. I don't like it. I open the garage door, glancing at the hopeful dogs, ears perked, listening for their favorite word, out. I shake my head at them and move toward my getaway car, this vehicle of mine just waiting to whisk me away from this annoyance, this person who won't leave me alone right now. Well, why can't I? You and I need to be able to talk about this, Veronica. The finger was wagging and pointing at the same time, a skill he's worked on and perfected over the years. He always likes to point. If you haven't ever been pointed at a lot, you should really try it. It makes it quite a challenge to keep your head on straight and not completely lose your cool. You need to think about this, and we have to be able to talk about it. No, we don't. I detected a childlike tone in my voice as I said that. Sometimes I'm so glad that fights are not recorded because we would probably all be so horrified by how we sounded we would never open our mouths again. Luckily, I made it to the car. I was in and I clammed up. I hated him right then. I had the thought as he walked back in, I hope I have a miscarriage. I thought it at that moment. I went to the bathroom after the movie was over and saw that I had started bleeding. Now, the one saving grace in this is that the cramps began before I had the thought. Thank God, or Goddess, whoever. Just thanks for that morsel. That makes me think that maybe I didn't cause it myself. Maybe my body knew before I did. Maybe some force out there knew before I did. I wanted to have this baby. I did. But as the situation sunk in, I began to question my motives. I wanted to have another child because I was afraid Annalise might die. Then I'd have a backup kid, as if she's replaceable. I wanted to have another child because everyone expected me to. By everyone, I mean the entirety of our families and the whole of suburbia in which we lived. I wanted to have another child because 35 was looming on the horizon, hanging there, begging to light upon me with all its advanced maternal age requirements and worries. Seriously, it's called terribly advanced maternal age. I guess we should be thankful it's not geriatric. I wanted to have another child because then our kid would have a sibling. I had one, and it's more fun that way, right? Or is it? I wanted to have another child because I thought I was supposed to. I'm a trigger puller. I'll just do it. With the infrequent sex we were having at that point in our relationship, somehow, my or his fertility had pulled it off. It wasn't about love. There wasn't a desire in me to create a bigger family with this man I was supposed to love so much. I just thought I'd get it over with. I think back to a conversation before this happened. Jen was right. She had told me I wasn't ready. Sometimes a friend sees something in you and you can't see it, and you won't listen. I didn't even understand why someone, even if it was a super long-time best friend, would say that. Maybe it was our dynamic, Pete and mine. Maybe outsiders see things that we can't see when we're inside a marriage. I know I have felt like I could diagnose other people's relationships plenty of times. But I didn't listen, of course. She's too harsh with me sometimes anyway, and I tend to ignore it. I didn't listen, and I wouldn't have listened even if she'd pushed harder. I did want this baby when it all boils down. It was still my baby. I knock on the door and Dr. Nichols here, and suddenly the pain, the physical pain grabs me hard. I won't let go. That's it. It's your voice.
Sorry.
What?
So how did you decide that this is the next journey that she's going to go on, learning to be a witch and traveling that way?
I think it was something that I was curious about anyway, and
Oh, you did research.
yes, well, I still do it. Yes, and so I think that it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, especially where I come from. I'm a native Texan, and there's a lot of religion and conservative people and that kind of thing. And I was married to someone who was a staunch Catholic, and I tried to convert, and it didn't stick. And I made an effort, and we're not married anymore. And I think that just whenever I would explore anything that was outside the box with that, it made people very uncomfortable, and that's what happens in this. It's just when you try to change, it can really make other people uncomfortable. When you try to live a different life and you try to explore other things, which I've done, music or whatever I do, and it can make people be like, what? Are you really doing this? And you go, yeah. And they're like, they picture you in this certain way. And not letting that affect what you want to do is really tough. And just saying I'm going to do it anyway to their face is really tough. So I think that was kind of the point that I was trying to get to. And the witchcraft is more of a metaphor about when that happens.
Empowerment.
Sorry?
Empowered?
Like getting empowered, yes, and empowered to live your life on your terms, which alternate life speaks to, right? And I think that so many times joining that, we can get pigeonholed as parents or in whatever specific role we're living in, and people want to just see us that way, and we can accept that, and then, you know, we're so complex as human beings. Why accept that?
Wonderful. We're going to talk more about.
Oh, sorry.
alternate lives.
Okay, good.
So our third reader is Janice Eidus. Eidus, sorry. And I actually met her through a friend, a good friend, Charles. Some of you know him. So Janice is the author of novels The Last Jewish Virgin, which is here for sale, The War of the Rosens, and The Urban Bliss. She's also the author of short story collections, The Celibacy Club, which I want to hear more about, and Vito Loves Geraldine. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, Purple Clover, Lilith, Next Tribe, and more than 40 anthologies. She has won a pushcart and 2 O. Henry Prizes. Everyone, please welcome Janice.
So, thank you, and I just want to say I absolutely loved tonight's theme. I knew it was the one I had to grab because Alternate Lives is the story of my life. It's also my middle name, I've decided after tonight. And I don't come as far as the other readers. I come from Murray Hill. So I walked 2/3 of the way here. But so I'm reading a short story tonight, which is from my collection, Vito Loves Geraldine. And the story is called DeVoe's Own. And it is about a young girl who is absolutely thirsty. She has an unquenchable thirst to lead an alternate life, which I was able to identify. DeVoe's Own. DeVoe found, nestled in the sand on the beach, something that resembled an earring, yet wasn't an earring, was in fact something superb. She was 10 years old on a summer vacation with her father and Linny, his lover. Her father was a writer. She brought the shining object home for his examination. He immediately declared it an unknown metaphor. Linny was restless, wanting to go back to the city. Come here, pumpkin. Let's see what your father calls a metaphor. DeVoe walked to where Linny sat in the lounge chair. A metaphor? Lenny laughed. It's just a rock. DeVoe grabbed it back, looking to her father, hoping he was looking at her since he had called it a metaphor, whatever that was, and Lenny had merely declared it a rock. But he was too busy staring hard at Lenny, with squinted eyes and a vertical line in his forehead, a look he'd often worn when her mother left them 5 years before. DeVoe's father said that her mother, from whom he was divorced, was a bit chubby, among other things. DeVoe did not like that word, chubby, and she tried not to think about what those other things were. Her mother lived with her own mother, DeVoe's grandmother. They wore the same flowery perfume. DeVoe knew that if she revealed the metaphor during her next visit there, her mother would look at it for just an instant and then reach for her omnipresent bottle of ginger ale without saying a word. Lenny had appeared in DeVoe's life about 6 months before, young, thin, and nervous, which made DeVoe nervous too. After about 3 days, Lenny began calling DeVoe Pumpkin and asking which boys and what they were like DeVoe had crushes on. DeVoe had never had a crush in her whole life on anyone. Despite Lenny's skinny body, she reminded DeVoe of her mother and grandmother. DeVoe's father had once had a novel published, was in the process of trying to get another one published and another written. He sometimes called himself a cliché and looked at DeVoe as if he wished she would just go away. DeVoe was aware of all these people, her grandmother, her mother, her father, the writer, and Lenny, but she wasn't sure of what they were doing in her life. She knew that she was in the process of growing up in order to someday get away from her father, and yet he was everything, and she suspected that Lenny wasn't forever, while her mother and grandmother were permanent and apart, like people from another planet. At first, she thought what she found on the beach was an earring. She loved earrings. When she was a teenager, she would have her ears pierced, although she would never wear big dangling ones like her mother wore. Although the object was not an earring, it made a lot more sense to her than anything else that summer. Her father insisted that she was to have fun swimming, making friends with children of other board vacationers, building sand castles. Instead, she found a solitary corner each morning at home or on the beach if she was made to, and stared at her treasure. DeVoe's father's nickname for her was Fish, because she was always thirsty. She loved to drink, not ginger ale like her mother, not black coffee like Lenny, not milk and honey like her grandmother, not vodka martinis like her father, just icy cold tap water or bubbling Perrier. Lenny taught her how to slice lemon and squeeze it into the Perrier. Sometimes DeVoe's thirst pained her. In the middle of the night, she would awaken 3-4 times with the urge to drink. If she didn't obey, she couldn't go back to sleep. But the new treasure cured her thirst. If she looked at it in a certain way when the light was just right, then her throat calmed, her stomach was soothed. The bathing suit her mother had given her that summer was a tangerine-colored bikini. 2 tangerine strips of elastic, one on top, one on bottom, so that she stuck the treasure into her belly button, between her tiny breasts, and on the top of her sandy tan thighs. When she lay on the sand, staring at the shining thing resting on her body, her thirst went away. Lenny went back to the city, assuring DeVoe that it wasn't about her, that she loved DeVoe as if they were best girlfriends, but she missed her job, her friends, and your father has other needs. DeVoe's father drove Lenny into the city. He didn't return until late at night, leaving her all alone for the day. I trust you, he said solemnly. I'll bring you a gift. And he did. A book for juveniles about the practice of voodoo in Haiti. And that night, late as it was, he went through it with her, marveling at the drawings, explaining different things. A few weeks later, they also returned to the city. Linny began calling on the phone, and soon she was around the apartment as much as before, although just for a few weeks. A red-haired woman named Pamela came over instead. It was obvious to DeVita that for Pamela, she didn't even exist, which didn't bother DeVita at all. One night, DeVita was in the kitchen at midnight, drinking glass after glass of Perrier with lemon, when Pamela wandered in, wearing a sleeveless tank top and nothing else, not even panties. She nudged DeVita aside so she could reach for the strawberry ice cream in the freezer. DeVita handed 2 spoons to Pamela, who was searching, not knowing where the silverware was kept. Pamela accepted the spoons without a word and wandered sleepily back to the bedroom, closing the door behind her. "Do you like Pamela?" her father asked the next day. "Who?" "You know who. Don't be cute. I'm tired." "No, she's voodoo." He perked up. He was using magical symbolism in his new book. "Voodoo? Pamela? Why?" "Because I'd like to wipe her out with some spells." DeVita liked outsmarting her father at his own game. He stopped smiling and lit a cigarette. "Well, do you like Linny?" DeVita said nothing. "Come on, baby, it's important to me. I want to know your thoughts, and I want you to know mine." DeVita squinted her eyes. "I'd rather not discuss any of this, Daddy," she said, and stood up. Her favorite object was in her room beneath her pillow. Her father watched as she walked, almost ran, into her own room. A week later, it was announced that DeVita would be spending 2 weeks with her mother and grandmother, and she'd be allowed to pack her own suitcase for the first time. Linny, who'd begun coming by again, called DeVita to say goodbye, calling when her father was at his job at the agency, my curse, he described it, so that DeVita would know that this call was only for her. DeVita's mother came to the door wearing a maroon tracksuit and smelling strongly of flowery perfume. DeVita's grandmother fried an extravagant dinner of eggplant and noodles, and DeVita broke out in hives. Huge pink warts an hour after dinner. It must have been one of the spices, the women agreed, placing cold, wet handkerchiefs all over DeVita's distorted skin. After that, DeVita caught the flu and was chilled and heated for days, spending most of her visit beneath 3 heavy blankets in her mother's room. When the fever broke, she was put into a taxi and sent back to her father's. He kissed her, hugged her, and then sat her down. "Your mother was upset by that stone thing you carry. She said that during your fever you talked to it, keeping it with you every second, and that you refused to let them take it away from you. They said you carried it into the bathroom and to the dinner table. Is all that true?" "Yes," said DeVita, thinking. "But I do all that here too. What is the big deal?" For a moment her father said nothing. Then he put his hands on his thighs. "I guess it's time we got rid of it then. I don't think it's healthy for you or anyone to depend on external crutches. There's already too much of this in our family. I mean, everyone does to some extent, but that's too much of an extent, baby. It is a metaphor," shouted DeVita. Certain with that word he would take back the awful things he was saying. Her father lit up. "Metaphor? How do you know such a word? Tell me what that means, baby." She didn't answer. "You're calling your rock a metaphor? I want to know why." Now he seemed angry. "Because it is, because she was wild, desperate. It's not an earring. It's not a rock. It's my own." She leaned back, frightened. "Give it to me," her father demanded. "Your mother said you were obsessed, and I refuse to see that happen to you this early. You've got all sorts of weird habits already." Now he was speaking to himself, not to her. The insomnia, the water, the talking aloud to yourself. "No," said DeVita. "Yes," said her father, with the same look he'd had on his face right before her mother had left them. DeVita reached into the pocket of her pink terry cloth shorts and handed him what was her only own thing, and now not hers any longer. Her father's fist closed around it. He went into the bathroom and she heard the flush. Then he came out. "Don't look so down," he said. "Metaphors crop up all the time. They really do." DeVita turned away. She would be fine from here on in. She would stop searching for magic and metaphors. If she was obsessive and she knew the meaning of that term instinctively, then she would turn completely the other way. She would listen politely, without interest or curiosity, from corners, forever, getting her revenge on them all, growing into a stone-cold woman. Thank you.
Ouch.
Wow.
We're just gonna sit here.
Wow. Wow. I hope my kid never says that anything again to me one day. No, so every once in a while you must get this. How much of that story is from your own life?
Well, I have a lot to say about that, but I won't say it all. So, DeVita's child, I love writing about young children because I feel that it's so liberating, and the further away we get from them, the more exciting it is to go back and recapture that. And I'm a huge believer in the power of the imagination, which is one of the themes that runs throughout my work. And although the exterior trappings of my childhood could not have been more different, could not have been, the interior journey was very similar that I was on. And I sought metaphor, I sought magic. I had all these found objects that I attributed symbolism to. And these found objects and these metaphors, and I didn't have the word metaphor, but they were what allowed me to escape what I call a wildly dysfunctional as opposed to a mildly dysfunctional family. So DeVita's own is my own, even though, you know, as I said, she's invented from whole cloth, but she is not invented from whole cloth. And I also would like to say, I don't believe she turned into a stone cold. I believe the person that I created on that page would have turned into anything but.
Very strong one, though, for sure.
Yes, yes.
Wow. So before we open up our discussion, I wanted to ask you why alternate lives out of all the different salons that you could have chosen to read at? What resonated with you to read at this one? Why don't we start with you?
Okay, well, you know, as I said when I was sort of joking, I feel that alternate lives, it's the story of my life. And, you know, even just beginning with DeVita's own, I mean, I did feel as a child, and I felt my entire life this incredible, I'm so drawn to myth, and I'm so drawn to magic. And, you know, when you use the word goddess before, on the one hand I say, oh, come on, we're not all goddesses. But then another part of me says, we all are goddesses. And so, you know, I love to create alternate lives in my fiction and in my real life, because I feel that I've led many alternate lives, and I lead so many to this day. And like many of you, you know, parent of an adopted child of color from Guatemala, writer, you know, devoted friend, wife, yoga practitioner, you know, citizen of the literary world. I mean, we're all leading so many alternate lives, and I think it's one of all of us. You know, I think it's one of our greatest strengths. I mean, coming here tonight, many of you said you haven't been here before, so you're starting a new alternate life. So I'm very, very drawn to that subject.
One of my writerly preoccupations seems to be darker nostalgias, the road not taken, what could be if you had decided on something else, even if you were very content with what you have. When I became a postpartum depression. Not a lot of people talk about this, but it is a thing, and it was pretty serious. So after they were born, and I started to recover from that, I was very committed to keeping hold of myself, to not get lost. I wrote an essay in the book that compared being pregnant with these twins to being Robinson Crusoe on his deserted island, under the threat of cannibalism from within. It was hard. So after they were born and we were separated physically, I thought, I'm not going to let myself go. The first year was cataclysmic, so that was kind of a wash. But after that, I thought, I'm not going to let myself go. I am who I am. A huge part of my identity is being a writer. And so I'm going to hold fast to that. And in some ways I resist the idea that this is an alternate life, because it should just be life, all of these things included in one. But I found myself sort of keeping firm boundaries between these two aspects of my life and being very committed to living the writer's life, while still being a committed parent. So that was what really attracted me to this, as sort of almost an act of rebellion.
For me, it just worked out that this was available, and it was all so I was like, yes, I'll do it. And what actually really spoke to me too was a great fit, and it was serendipitous. So I was honored to be a part of it. And Alternate Lives speaks to me not only because of the subject matter in my book and her journey, but I think that I'm just the type, like I said earlier, like I just, instead of thinking about the road not taken, I tend to just take it, and I'm like her. I'm a trigger puller. I am just one of my friends one day, I wanted her to go do something with me. I can't remember what it was, something completely outside our comfort zone. She was like, you're always trying things. And I was like, isn't that a good thing? And so I am. I'm just one that I'll just get out there and do it. And that's sort of my platform as a human as I continue. Like, I want to encourage other people to do that too. Like, I wonder, just let's go do it and figure it out. And if you're thinking about that alternate life, what's holding you back? Let's do it.
So I'm loving this. So I have, Randon said something about boundaries, and I think that I'm going to get 3 very different answers up here. But do you set boundaries between your writerly life and your I'm a mom life? And if so, how do you negotiate that in real time? Like, besides just in your head, how do you actually make that happen? Or if not, how do you blend it? How does that work for you? So,
Me? Oh God, it's really tough. I don't think I set a ton of boundaries before, because I'm always trying to show my kids that they can do anything, and especially as girls. I have two girls. They are 14 and 10, and so I think that I don't set a lot of boundaries with a lot of it. It tends to mesh together, and maybe that's just sometimes how it is as a parent. Things just get a little messy. But I mean, I set a lot of boundaries in other ways, as the ways we're treated and things like that. But as far as this goes, so I don't think I set as many between those. I think it blurs a bit.
You let yourself be whatever.
Whatever it is in that moment that I need to be, I am.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
I set them. I do, and partly in the early years of having, or early months, and then years of having twins, it felt like a survival tactic. And I did some things that now seem a little silly and arbitrary. I had a mug that had the letter R on it for my first name, and I got as a gift a mug that had an M on it for mom. And so I would only use the M mug when I was hanging out with my twins, and I would use the R mug when they were all out of their house.
A metaphor.
So that's a really sort of small and odd thing. But I was writing this book while they were young, and I was still in the trenches, and they still are, but while I was really in the trenches of early parenthood. And so I found I could only really write when I was alone. And I'd have to get into this haunted mood to write about these things. So I made 2 playlists. I made my moody haunted playlist that I would play just 3 songs or so while I was driving home from preschool to sort of get into this mood. And then on the way to pick them up, I would put one of their dance mixes on that was very peppy, so that I could easily change tracks from the sort of darker intellectual work, and then I could still be like, hey, how was school, and be more on the same page as them.
Are you mean the Wiggles?
No, there was some Delight on there, and other things. Yeah, Grooves in the Heart they really like. that, and I also go away on residencies to various artist colonies. And I did that before I was married, I did that before I became a parent, and after the first year I said, this is who I am and this is what I do. So I set it up with the twins very early that this was a good thing for me to do. They would have fun while I was away. I got to do my writing work, they got to hang out with their dad. And so I sort of built it in early as a positive thing.
Can you tell us, just because there are enough people that,
Yes.
that actually don't allow themselves to do this, how long were your residencies, and were they close enough to home that if something were to happen, you could just suddenly go home, or how did you manage that, just as
Yes.
a quick diversion?
The one I go to most often is 4 hours away from home. I only left because of Hurricane Sandy. I've never been called home to do something because my spouse also supports these boundaries that I have set. And the first time I went, the twins were a little bit over 1 year old, and I went away for 2 weeks. And because of my peculiar makeup, I did not miss anyone at home at all. But
You're the right one.
But the beautiful thing about this is as soon as I got back, I couldn't believe I had been without them for so long. It was like the best of both worlds. While I was away, I was completely unconcerned. I trust my spouse. I knew things were going to be going as smoothly as possible at home. But then when I got back, I was so happy to be back with them. So I felt lucky to have that happen. Instead of being crushed with missing them while I was away, it was sort of suspended until the second I walked in the door and was tackled. So that worked out well.
Janice?
So I think my experience would be a combination in some ways of both of yours, I would say. Before I became a parent, I was very happily and determinedly child-free, which some of you who knew me pre-parenting were stunned the day I said that I wanted to be a parent. And it was really, for me, 9/11 that really changed me. My husband and I both witnessed the towers fall in person, and I literally woke up another person after years of saying, you know, I never want a child, I never want to be a parent, I have no interest. It's the one conflict-free sphere in my entire being. And then it was like, okay, this is what I want more than anything on earth. And so after a number of years of couple therapy, it was a huge shock. We decided to adopt our daughter from Guatemala, and if anybody has been through the adoption process, that's a very intense process. You know, I always say any nudnik can have a child, but when you're going through adoption, it's a very long process, and during that process, I knew that I was making this great commitment. I used to call myself a colony hopper, and meaning that I would be at Yaddo for a month 1 year, and then 3 months later at McDowell, and then at the Virginia Center for Creative Arts, and I got really most of my best writing done there. My husband was completely supportive of my doing that. The minute I became a parent, I did some of it, and I also teach at a lot of writing conferences around the world, but I thought, I'll do this a little bit. I don't want to do it as much. Like you, when I got there, I was happy, happy, happy. But there was a part of me that was still yearning to come back. So I do them, but I do it much less often. In terms of boundaries at home, it's one big holistic blur. You know, today, she's now 17. She knew I was getting ready for a reading. She knew I was rereading, choosing my outfit, all of those things we do before a reading. And of course, she had a sudden need to talk to me about many, many, many pressing things, none of which were pressing. And I said to her, you see that I'm getting ready, you know that I'm going out. And she said, but I'm your daughter. So I thought, well, I know I'm being manipulated, but it's kind of fun. And I know I'll be fine for the reading, so why not be present for her? So it's kind of this much more blur kind of thing. She and I have the same mugs. You know, I don't have a separate mug. But the boundaries are that she has learned, as I've gotten older, that this is who I am, this is what I must do. I model for her. She's a very serious photographer. In fact, I wrote an essay recently about the connection between her photography and my writing, which I feel is real. The other thing that I do that she has become, I just say, I'm off to the Algonquin Hotel to write. oh, hi, Mom, have fun at the Algonquin. You know, so I'm a hotel bar writer, which keeps me in the city where best hotel bars to write. I live not far from the Algonquin. It's a home away from home. And she just accepts it. My mom writes at the Algonquin, and she tells her friends, and they're, what? Your mom, but that's what I do, and it's all just worked out. So not boundary-less, but not so structured with boundaries.
I love it. Okay, so we are going to turn off the live cast, but before we do, did we? Not yet? Okay, just a minute, live cast. We have some dates that I want you all to know about, and particularly you people who are watching the live cast. So on Saturday, November 2nd, we have an event coming up in Baltimore, Maryland. So you guys, where's DC? Drive up, Brandon. Come see us. We're on the City Light stage, which Carla Dupre runs City Light. City Lit. I can't read my own handwriting.
It's City Lit.
City Lit, yeah, City Lit stage. And Carla Dupre runs City Lit in Baltimore, and she's been to read for us. She's an absolutely brilliant human being. And it is called the Brilliant Baltimore Festival. We're doing a panel on persistence. Christina is running the panel, and we have some old and new Parentis people on the panel. It's very exciting.
Not to give up.
Yeah, not to give up. Then on Wednesday, November 6th, we have a new event, which is pretty exciting, in Industry City in Brooklyn. It is at a place called the Frying Pan. It is a women's catalyst event. It's not our event, but we're partnering with them. And it is they're going to interview me. So if you want to know about me, you got to go to Brooklyn. So, it's Emily Ryan is doing the interviewing, and it's all about founding Parentis. What's Parentis like? What's it like to be a female founder? What's it like to be me? It's very boring. No, it's going to be really, really fun. And also, happy hour is going to be extended for like most of the night. So it will get more fun as the night goes on. And it's $20 in advance, $30 at the door, and 100% of the proceeds they fund Parentis. So, you know, buy your ticket and then come or don't. So, you guys are being irreverent. Okay, and then on Tuesday, November 12th, on Tuesday, November 12th, all of you come back to this room because we are doing the next Parentis reading, which is Small Towns USA. And we will also have our very first fellow that we ever had. So we present a fellowship once a year to a writer who has children under 10. The winner, I can't tell you who she is, but she will be here from San Diego. And Abby Scher, our very first fellow ever, will be presenting that award to her, and you'll get to hear the winning story. Plus, you'll hear three fantastic authors. Marie Lee, she's coming back, and then two other really good ones. That's all on our website, and that is it for the webcast. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next month, and we can turn that off.